Thank you, Duff.
At the present moment, traveling town to town, the mystery of the motion, right here, right now, right here, right now, whoa, right here, right now.
That's a great question, and I've been thinking about the answer to that question. How I hung on, and it was the encouragement of. It was clearly my passion. Okay, and I felt that I had the responsibility of the family to do the family business, but my passion was always teaching, and people and my family was not really encouraging of that. So, I mean, my family of origin. So, people, my godmother, the woman. And another woman named Jean Mitchell was head of the Brearley School, was a family friend. And my former headmaster at Foot, Frank Perrine, were incredibly helpful and just kept me, just keeping the dream alive, just saying, you can do this. Someday you'll be able to do this. And it was tremendously helpful because there were many, many days so I thought that was never going to happen. So it was, like so many other things, it took other people to help me get there. Hmm. I think that there are a couple of things that come to mind right off the bat. I've always operated from day one that I think teaching is about the best interest of my students, no matter what their age. And so I'm always focused on what's best for them. That's what necessarily best for their family or for the administration, wherever you are, or anything else, but what's best for the kids. And then the other part, I think, and this is the true essence, I think, that I've always treated each child respectfully and the whole child respectfully, not just the person who shows up in my class. And let me tell you about how every class in high school starts this way. The first day, I say that we have one rule. That one rule is respect. And it's not even a rule; it's a way to live, and we have to do it every day. And that it's about respecting yourself, respecting the people around you, and I hope to earn your respect by treating you respectfully. And there's a time when I don't treat you respectfully. I want you to let me know because sometimes people can feel disrespected, even though the intent of someone else is not to disrespect them. So I want to know that and have you let me know. The other thing, and this is the really transcendent part, I tell them that from day one, I trust them. And I truly trust them. I mean, if you tell me that you need to go somewhere or that you have a pass for this or you have a reason to do something, I'm going to trust you from day one. I'm going to assume that you're going to tell me the truth rather than assume you're not. And those two things make a huge difference because right away, each student feels safe and respected. Okay. And that somebody has their back and over the years, because I have lived that. The reputation I have with the kids is that Mr. O has your back, and that helps a lot.
Mr. O, I got a question for you here.
Yeah.
Do you like I'm a big fan of the inspirational teacher movies.
Yeah.
You know, you as well. Dead Poet Society for me was a seminal one. It actually came out in my final year of high school with Robin Williams. Not sure if you ever saw it, but I really resonated with me. Do you have any? I mean, Goodbye, Mr. Chips is another classic. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that one. Do you have any inspirational teacher movies that kind of
the one I think of is not so much what's obviously teaching is about children. The one I think is the most insightful is a French movie called Small Change, and I can't pronounce what the French is, but it's a wonderful movie about children and about understanding kids at all different ages and allowing them to grow and never judging them and teaching them to at the same time to stand up for themselves. Like you're saying that the Dead Poets Society, that was one of the things, encouraging kids to stand up. And we had an incident a few years ago where my kids, my students, stood up for myself and other teachers when nobody else would. And because they stood up and because of the way they did it and the way that they orchestrated the whole process, they saved not only my job and another teacher's job at the school, but 53 teachers in New Haven school system were all going to be be reassigned and basically removed from where they were teaching. And the kids said, "We're not doing it." And
they got up on the desks and said, "Captain, my captain," kind of thing.
Well, yeah, but it was a much more extended. They stood up on the desk the first day, and they said, and their kids were in tears when I told them, and they said, "Mister, you're a soccer coach, you're advisor to the senior class next year. They can't do this." And I said, "Well," and they said, "Why?" And I said, I really don't know why. I can't give you a reason, a coherent answer to tell you why." So they said, one little girl stood up and said, "We're not doing this. We are not doing this." And from that, by the end of that class, they were writing petitions that they eventually got out onto the net and had 39 signatures the first day and contacted alumni. And once it was empowering for them because once they realized what they could do, they had a reason. It had to be something that would galvanize them. But once they had that reason, they were on their own and the empowerment was incredible. So they really deserve all the credit for saving those people's lives. I mean, jobs. And for me, the moment that I remember the best is they were going to have a sit-in, literally go back to the 60s and have sit-ins outside the classes. And the principal got word of that. And so she decided to send everybody outside instead the last period of a day. And so I went out there and towards the end and just spoke to the kids about what was going on. And I said, "Look," and there were a lot of people there to try to catch me from the downtown administration because they thought somehow I was leading this rebellion that was student inspired. They couldn't, and I think it was ultimately so disrespectful to the students to think that the students couldn't do it on their own, which they did. And so I was speaking to the kids right outside here. And I said, "Look, this is all going to be left up to adults. How this is going to get resolved but I said, I can't tell you, first of all, thank you. I can't tell you how much I appreciate your support. But then I said, here's, no matter what happens, I want you to just sit and think about how you feel today. And we're out in this field and I'm talking to you because of what you people have done. You've empowered yourself. How does that feel? How does that sense of empowering yourself collectively and individually feel? It's a great feeling. So no matter what happens, don't measure yourself, don't measure what you've done by the results. Measure what you've done by what you've accomplished in empowering yourselves. And then I told them the other thing why I love to teach at this school, and I continued, is because we are an incredibly diverse population here, and have been all the time I've taught here. And the student body, along with some very special colleagues, are the reason why I'm still here. And these kids, they learn from the older kids to be respectful of other cultures. And they truly are, of other ethnicities and other cultures, in a way that transcends what everything else is going on in the world today. They live it. And they learn, then the older kids teach the younger kids to be respectful, and then they become the older kids, and that gets passed down from student class to student class. And it's just amazing how that we have fights and we have difficulties in high school, but they're always about who stole somebody's girlfriend or somebody's boyfriend or something, what did this. They're never anything based on anything other than there's any issues about ethnicity or culture, because they respect each other so much. So I told them that.
That's great.
And they said, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. That's all. It is a singular record. That's true. That's true. And and so it's obviously coaching greatness. But what is, we have two rules, and this is the way it works. We have the only two rules on the team are never quit, and they never quit, and no drama. A girls' soccer team, prospective drama could come up at any time, so you have to be ready. So we don't have any, and they actually love that because they're not worried about who's going to say something about them today or tomorrow, or so they all stick together, and that's the core. And the other thing is they enjoy just playing the game, which I think sometimes one of the kids this year looked at me and she said, Mr. O, I quit soccer. I played soccer when I was young, and then I quit it when it started to become competitive because it wasn't fun anymore, and people were getting cut, and and there was more pressure building, and it just wasn't fun anymore. And she said, "This is fun. I'm playing now in high school because I like to play, and you give us the chance to play, and it's true. We have some very skilled players, but we don't have enough of them. But we have an awful lot of players." And they feed off each other, and they never quit. And the fans come. It's one that just last week, a coach from another school afterwards, I think they had beaten us 7-0, something like that. And our kids,
a lot in soccer.
Oh, it is a lot. So our kids went and rushed the goalie because she had gone in the second half and that she'd done a really good job. And so they were just hugging her and stuff and cheering her. And the other coaches like watching, and her team is watching. And then the parents are cheering from the stands behind. And they said, they all had smiles on their faces, the other team. And they said, what a wonderful, thing to watch, just to see these kids enjoy playing. So that's it. We enjoy it.
Yeah.
And they've won the sportsmanship award. The referees absolutely love them because they know they never quit. We never get cards. They play up to the limit of their abilities, all of them, and they work real hard to get better. And so I couldn't enjoy. Duff, if we were 58-0, I don't think I would have appreciated it anymore. I love this just the way it is. And I'd like to win a few games, but that'll come.
Next season. There's always next season.
There's always next season.
I coach as well. I coach a little bit of hockey up here in Canada, and listeners might know that. And I love it. I mean, what it teaches, it's girls as well. At this point, my daughter's 14, so it's U15.
Yeah, my daughter played She did too. Our daughter played too, hockey. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, there are many ways to measure success, right? Besides the scoreboard. And I mean, the kids having fun, like our main philosophy, the other coaches and myself is really, to try to instill a lifelong love of playing the sport. Because if you do that, then, nothing else really matters. I mean, it's nice to win a few too, sure.
Right. But you hit on it. I mean, after, in high school or whenever, ultimately you're going to move on. And what you want to take with you is the game and your enjoyment of the game. Can't take your team with you, can't take your record with you, but you can take your enjoyment of the game and live that all your life. And that's, you hit it on right on. I believe you're absolutely right on that.
Yeah, I've got countless stories of friends' kids or kids that I knew even growing up who played really high level competitive hockey and quit at the age of 18 or 19. Kind of didn't go into the NHL or didn't carry on into playing college, and actually kind of hated the game. Right? Like they played it at a really competitive level. They were amazing at it, but they never really enjoyed it that much because they felt sick before games. They cried when they lost. It was just all about winning and not about just doing it for other reasons.
They often felt abused by their coaches and by the expectation of fans. And absolutely. We had the same thing happen in our family. Owen's sister, Carly, was a great athlete and played all kinds of different sports. And she was playing soccer and field hockey and ice hockey and baseball, hardball with the boys. And she was incredibly competitive and incredibly successful. And a coach at a university in New York State wanted her to come there to be the kind of the centerpiece of the midfield of her field hockey team, and offered her a scholarship and everything else. And she went out to the University of Montana to visit a friend, and she came back and told us, "I'm not ever playing sports again. I'm going to go climb mountains and cross rivers." And so that's what she did. I mean, she still plays, informal soccer and hockey and stuff like that, but she just walked away, just like you're talking about. And it does become too much.
It's a common story.
And it's also about parental expectations sometimes. And I must admit, I was guilty of that. So partly on me too.
I was never that good at hockey, so I'm not guilty of that.
Me neither. But my grandfather was, but I wasn't.
But I love it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think it's very interesting stuff because I was talking to my colleague today, Chris Merck, and we were talking about uh, testing and how testing, there's no way to truly test critical thinking. So you have this conventional testing going on all around you, forcing people into multiple choice questions and boxes and thinking in certain ways. And critical thinking is much, much more than that and much more complex. So you have to help kids break things down, how to understand what's important at different times, and trust themselves. We had a test today, and one of the kids said, "Mr. O, is this a multiple choice test?" I said, "No." He said, she said, "Do we have to write?" And I said, "Of course you have to write. If you don't learn how to write, you can't express your own ideas.
Mm-hmm.
Your own ideas aren't going to be expressed in a test or a score. They're only going to express when you put them on paper, or on, in on your computer of your own thoughts. That's your expression. That's you, and how you think and how you approach things. So how to be analytical and then also conscious of questioning yourself, which is a really important part of critical thinking. You can form great structures, but then you have to be able to look back and say, oh, you know what? I missed this one. I've got to rebuild because it's kind of this critical thinking pyramid I put together is like tilted. So I have to kind of fix it. And it's about trusting themselves and they're trusting their ability to think. And if you think about it, today's young people, they have their social media, they have their phones, they have their, the tests that are all online. They don't have a great sense of how to just think and realize that's important too, because it's not reinforced. It's not them. It's not reinforced around them. So I think the pressure is very much reflective of what happened in the Times. What that article, that's not a reach for me at all to understand how that happened. I don't know understand why they fired him, but I can see the student pressure. One of the things that I do and we do here with the students is I try to teach them how to be accountable for their own learning, not having somebody else like the professor didn't teach them or made their work too hard. It's really important that you be accountable for your own learning because you don't have, if you don't take that accountability, you can never change it. You're always putting it on somebody else, that professor or this. But if you learn, and I mean, I learned the hard way because my sophomore year, it's at prep school, freshman year, I was fine. Sophomore year, I was a disaster. And I tell my kids to this day that I made no sense and I was breaking all the rules and doing stupid things. And my grades plummeted. And it finally occurred to me one day when I was getting slammed on another test that actually this was me who was doing this. It wasn't somebody else who was doing it to me. This 33 or whatever I was going to get on the test was all mine. I owned it. And once I started even in the dire circumstances of that year, once I started owning things, I could start to change things because I realized it's up to me. So today, that's really the struggle. And these college kids, a lot of them don't have that. The kids, they're not accountable. They're just they learn how to appear to be accountable for the satisfaction of teachers and grades and things like that, but not truly accountable to themselves. So they're truly accountable to themselves. I don't think that argument they would make that argument. Something's too hard. Does that make sense? Mhm. No, it's gotten harder because of the phones. The phones are an incredible distraction. So,
Attention.
yeah, attention. So it's gotten harder. You can use the phones. And what I try to do now is teach the kids how to use their phones as sources of information rather than as socialization tools. Because they don't know really they don't know what's available to them. Okay. If, the kids in Iran today who are trying to figure out how to get access to the net and where they can get information and get it in and out currently right now, our kids, they're just don't even know how to begin to do that. And so I'm trying to teach them what is BBC, what are the different, all the things that are available to you that you can use. And I always say, no one can ever teach you what to think. I can teach you how to think and how to approach things, but no one can ever, and don't ever let anybody tell you what to think. But in your own thinking, you have to get as much information as you possibly can from whatever sources, and then you have to sort. And I think that the hardest thing for not only kids, but all of us today is the amount of information that we have every day that we have to sort. I mean, it's just unbelievable. A couple of years ago, Inga and I were at a wedding up at Bowdoin, and there was a man, I forget his name, who has created this whole concept of visualizing data, and he actually could draw pictures of data and use them for incredible. Much like the guy at Yale who does that kind of stuff. But
Oh yeah,
yeah,
Douglas.
is it
Yeah,
Stewie? Yeah.
yeah,
Um,
Tufty or
Tufty. No,
yeah,
Tufty. That's
Edward Tufty.
his
Yeah.
stuff is unbelievable. But very much like that. And he produced a small book, and in the book, I'll never forget this. I tell my kids every year, the average person in America in the 1840s, okay, in whole lifetime, their whole lifetime, in terms of exposure to information, we have the equivalent of that every day on our phones. That amount of the content, and and when you think about that, it's truly mind-boggling. I mean, that could be so. Absolutely. Um, so Duff, do you want me to? I have a couple things that I'm really proud of, or pleased about what I. Okay. Well, when I first was teaching, I was teaching in elementary school, and I was teaching kids how to read. And that became, I'm infinitely fascinated by it because it's such a complex process for each individual person, and it varies tremendously by culture, by so many different ways. And I've always been fascinated by that. And a few years ago, it occurred to me and another teacher that it would be great if we could have because teachers, elementary teachers have 27, 28, 29, they're just overwhelmed with the amount of kids they have in their classroom. So they can't possibly sit there and read with you like what used to happen, and go through reading groups in the way that I think most of us were educated. So I said, how can we put these two things together? And so what we came up with is this concept called building bridges, in which our students from our school would volunteer to as part of a regular class, but they choose the class to do this, to go to an elementary school across town and sit down one-on-one with a second or third grader over the course of a term or over the course of a year, and help just read with them. All right. And they would read back and forth to each other, but also it's incredibly was amazing to see the social interactions between the older kids and the younger kids, and as cultures and all these different people who would never have connecting, and especially for the younger kids at a young age, changed their lives. And the younger kids just loved it and were so appreciative. And the older kids loved it just as much, which was the part that I found really amazing. I think one of the hardest things about being an adolescent is that all your expectations are, not, I wouldn't say negative, but they're necessarily not positive in the sense that we expect a lot more from you than grades and behaving and not doing this and not doing that, and it doesn't. We don't really invest a lot of responsibility in what they or expectation of what they can do. And these kids absolutely took the relationship with their student to heart, and they still, some of them are still in touch with those kids. And this was a while back. And we had the one little girl I'll never forget. She had her capstone, and she did her capstone on being and she hadn't been terribly successful in high school, but this is one of the best things that she thought about it. And she said, um, she started breaking down the middle of the question, and because somebody asked her, "Do you think she made a difference? What difference?" And she just started to cry, and then finally she got her act together. She said, "A reason why I started to cry is that I never thought I would ever make a difference at all." And that was just like, you don't need to hear too many other things like that to know that it was the right thing to do. So but also the connection of having taught kids how to read. And one of the things we do before we'd start is I would ask each one of them to think, can you remember how you learned to read? And it was fascinating what they would come back with. Some people don't. And I can't particularly give you but some kids could give you exact detail how they learned to read. And some reading is to me, I still one of the great frontiers of education. Um, I had a student whose father taught at Yale Law School, brilliant kid, and today he's done, you can imagine, great things in this world. But he was so frustrated because he couldn't write and he couldn't read. First grade, and his mother had great expectations for him. Didn't happen. Second grade, he went to Europe, to England, and his mother was convinced that the English would teach him how to, properly read and write. And he came back more frustrated. And I had him for third grade. I knew him from first grade, but I had him in third grade. And he was just like, you could just see he was closing in on himself. And he was just like so frustrated and brilliant. And so I said, Pete, I said, here's what we're going to do. I said, I know you've got all this inside you. Why don't you just tell me your stories and I'll write them down? So we would paint, I would write, he would tell me the story and I would write it down. And I would say, well, here's the story. Why don't you illustrate it? And so he would illustrate it. And then after a while, he relaxed and it freed him up and he was off. But I think of all those kids out there that don't have somebody say that to them at the right time.
And then close off, right? And
yeah.
don't have the confidence. And you can you can just see how that moment in time can take you in,
Absolutely.
It's like sliding doors, right? Like one direction or the other, where you completely close off and go in the wrong direction.
Well, and never get back to where you could have been. Never get back there, because just by that one. See, that's why I believe in the teaching moment, which is that time. You're going to do all the lesson plans in the world, but sometimes in a class discussion, something will come up that if you in the class rip on that and really go with it, you can go to amazing places. But a true teacher needs to be able to recognize those moments. And when they do, and then they can synthesize and go from there, that's the excitement. That's the excitement for learning, for their learning and for your learning. It sure does. You can say, I've never thought of tickling myself at that moment, but maybe I will from now on as something that I could do. Excuse me, kids, I have to tickle myself while we're doing this. Yeah, no, it's really it's wonderful and I just want to tell you about something that's happening next week. A student that I had in 8th grade at foot a long, long time ago. He's just 2 days ago became one of the top people at USAID in Washington, the State Department arm for aid for the world. And he's worked his way up and he's done amazing things. And he's coming, there's a conference at Yale next week about environmental justice and climate change. And it's the people at Yale and also at the environmental school and also at USAID is participating. And his name is Clinton White. And Clinton is coming to our school next Thursday. And he insisted on coming to Career before he started the conference for two reasons. Because he wanted to teach at this school. I mean, he wanted to come to the school which we have replaced the school that his aunt taught at, but to come to the school where it represents where his aunt used to teach, because he's from New Haven. And the other thing, and this blows me away, he wanted to come and teach at this school or be at the school where I teach. Decades later, that mattered to him and that matters to me. So that kind of sums up why I get what I get out of this and what I give to it. So
nice.
Well, I'm not sure about that, but thank you. Yeah, it's so bad.
I had a couple that that certainly, you know, resonated or that stayed with me over the years, but never one where I had, you know, such a you know, maybe the warm feeling that I feel like I would get from Mr. O here. So I mean, you know, like I had some, it was a little bit maybe more a little bit more fear than straight up mutual respect. Yeah, a little bit more stick than carrot. So you know, I don't know if I truly had like a Mr. Chips type moment that I would with Mr. O here.
Well, it was a real pleasure joining both you guys and just talking about what I love to do. It was fun.
Thanks so much.
Thank you. Take care.
Yeah. So, like I was saying, wow, kind of teacher you wish every kid had early on, right?
Yeah, I had some moments. I mean, even with some of the teachers that you and I both had in high school, you know, we mentioned Bob Mahar. He was a little, you know, he was a Jesuit, right? And I think he was a Jesuit priest, even ended up being a judge later. So he, you know, there was a severeness to him, and he sort of instilled a little bit of fear. And same, you know, Jeff Smith, there was a fear there, but certainly like effective and memorable teachers in both those cases. And also Mr. Hiltz as well in physics. I told you there's still things that I remember from him, you know, like, what is it, 30 years later? You know, like they were very effective teachers anyway, but I didn't necessarily get huge warm fuzzies from them until maybe afterwards. And the one teacher, although I never had him for a class, I had him as a coach that I did just have a great like relationship and learned a lot from was Stu Swan, who was my rugby coach at SAC, who, you know, for years afterwards stayed in touch and had a tremendous impact on me in the way that, you know, somebody in that position it should have on you, right? Like those are the ones that are teaching you life lessons.
I think his that story, I've heard that story about when he was going to get removed from his job before. That's like that's a movie script, right?
That's right out of Dead Poets Society. Although I think he does get removed, right? Like, right. And they all stand up on their desks and say, "Captain, my captain."
Yeah.
And it's a full tearjerker. Yeah. I got to watch that movie again. Dead Poet Society, Robin Williams. Great one.
To be that inspirational to get people to start protesting on your behalf.
Yeah. I've just got a funny one for you. I'm sure you've seen these before, like compendium on the internet of funny things that students have done. Like sometimes it proves like, or it just shows that students are like really clever. I'm trying to think. There's one that was, like on a physics test, and it said, what is the strongest of all the forces? And the student put love.
That's amazing.
And another one,
we'll have that student on as a guest.
Yeah. And another one, it's like a picture, a chemistry test with all these different molecules. And it said, name the following molecules. And it's like Bob, Charles, Stephen. It's not wrong. It just asked me to name them. I'm giving them names.
That remains one of Marguerite's great skills. She is a professional namer of things. She names every chicken we get. She's had mice and gerbils and whatever. Her current gerbils are Dwight and Jim, because she started watching The Office not that long ago.
Excellent.
And among our chickens at current is Phoebe Bridgers. We had a Heath Ledger, but Heath Ledger died. Marguerite thought we might have cursed that chicken.
Yeah, sounds like
but it. In any case, we love Bob Osborne. He's the greatest. Okay, I've got one for you too. I came across this one yesterday. So listeners will remember not that long ago, 5 or 6 or 7 episodes ago, I interviewed this guy, Debashish Banerjee from the California Institute of Integral Studies. I was so taken with him that I'm a student again. I'm taking a course taught by Debashish Wednesday nights on the philosophy of Sri Aurobindo. And in the class last night, he was talking about organs and in this context, it wasn't just organs like, the heart, the lungs, the whatever. There were other dimensionalities of organs, like the organ of thought, right? And the different organs that are more, you might call them conceptual, but we have to believe too that, thought takes place in some kind of place, right? So I
think it's the brain.
Well, no, I'm not sure about that. But there's the organ of thought.
I'm going to go with brain.
Okay. It's a lump of flesh, but okay. So anyway, he's talking about different organs above and beyond the ones that we look at in biology. And then he used the term organization. And
oh yeah, that's a good one.
And I suddenly was like, wait, that's an organization has component organs. I had no idea.
That's right. Like you take a bunch of, blood vessels and atria and ventricles, and you organize them into the heart. You have organized them by making an organ, the heart. That's a cool one.
Yeah. And the thing is too, about the other stuff, that what they're talking about in yoga is that your ability to reorganize your sense of self. So again, at a different level of above and beyond biology, but it's within your power to in consciousness to do a similar thing, where you can basically create a new organ of discrimination or a new organ of perception, right? And you can actually, so
those are good. And they make you think of also, disorganized versus unorganized, right? Like I think sometimes people will maybe use those interchangeably.
Yeah.
But they're not, right? Like something that is disorganized had at one point been organized. And something that is unorganized
is
something that has never been organized in the first place. So to be disorganized had to have been organized in the first place. But something that's unorganized, never organized in the first place.
Wow. Okay. So you got one.
You just
got one off of mine, right? So you have one for me off of mine. Excellent. That's a tag team.
It's an assist.
So
you got the assist on that one.
Bob Osborne has been to our house several times. And we just saw he and his wife and his family in Connecticut not that long ago. And Joey knows the Osbornes as well as I do. So I just wanted to see what how she would describe Bob Osborne from the viewpoint of the Sage of Sages. Okay. Closing out with Oribindo. I went looking today for, because we talked about it a little bit with Bob, teaching people how to think. And as I've said a few times in the same program, a lot of yoga is basically about getting better control over your thoughts. And rejecting the ones you don't need and enhancing the ones that you do. So here's where you've been on thinking. And I guess ultimately the value of teaching and what people like Bob Osborne do. The majority of mankind do not think. They have only thought sensations. A large minority think confusedly, mixing up desires, predilections, passions, prejudgments, old associations and prejudices with pure and disinterested thought. Only a few, the rare aristocrats of the earth, can really and truly think. That is now the true aristocracy, not the aristocracy of the body and birth, not the aristocracy of vital superiority, wealth, pride, and luxury, not the aristocracy of higher emotions, courage, energy, successful political instinct, and the habit of mastery and rule, though these latter cannot be neglected, but the aristocracy of knowledge, undisturbed insight, and intellectual ability. That is,
Do you count yourself among that aristocracy? Duff?
I aspire to be part of that aristocracy. That's what we're trying to figure out here.
You know what? I'll take any of them. They all sound good to me.
Right? You get the land and the wealth, and you can build a think tank center for us. The aristocracy of knowledge people will come do our thing on your estate.
All right. I'm going to work on the vital superiority, wealth, pride, and luxury part.
Thanks for listening. We'll be back with you in a week.
Bye-bye.
After present moment, traveling town to town, the mystery of the motion, right here, right now. Right here, right now. Whoa, right here, right now.
You've been listening to How to Tickle Yourself with your hosts Duff McDonald and Matt McButter. You can help us by liking, subscribing, and sharing this podcast with others. You can talk to us and see what else is happening on Instagram and Facebook at How to Tickle Yourself. This program was recorded in Studio B of the historic Rockledge Recording Studio and the Tunnel Under Arundel. Right Here, Right Now, our original 16-part theme music was written and recorded by the legendary Paul Reddick and Kyle Ferguson of the Sidemen, with the brilliant Steve Mariner on bass and drums and in the mixing room. The podcast is produced and distributed by Storic Media. Our editor is Andrew Steiner. Our coordinator is Samantha Abramovitz. Our producers are Kristen Verbitsky and Chuck LaBella. For more information, visit storicmedia.com. That's STORIC media.com.
My love, my dear.